What is up, guys? It's Woody back with another video, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how I edit my photos. We're strictly going to stick with Lightroom today, but let's get right into it. Alrighty guys, so here we have a series of photos that we are going to edit, and these are all photos that I've taken in the past couple of years or so, some of them quite recently. But we're just gonna go through and start editing these. Where I like to start with my editing is obviously just light correction. This photo is pretty well lit, pretty correctly exposed to begin with. I would say I'd like to brighten these shadows a little bit, reduce those highlights so he's a little bit more defined. Maybe increase the exposures a little bit, bring the contrast up. I don't like that grayness, like if we leave the contrast down, I don't like that grayness as much. And again, guys, there's literally no right or wrong way to editing. There is just good or bad. I always use the S curve. I don't do the, the basic S always. Sometimes I do, but I like to just bring this guy up just a little bit right here. So like I said, we can even see the difference from right there. That is just basic color correcting. I don't really need to, do anything with the whites that much. Maybe we can bring the blacks up just a little bit. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. Most of my photos, I like to keep them on the warmer side. This actually does look pretty well warm. I keep most of my photos on the warmer side. It's just my style. Again, like I said, there's no right or wrong way to editing. There's just good or bad, and to be plain and simple. I always bring the vibrance up a little bit and bring the saturation down just a touch. It kind of mutes those colors a little bit, because after you do a lot of different edits, it starts to make some of those colors pop. That's where we get into this color mixer. Start with the reds, which we have none. We won't touch the reds. The oranges we probably have a little bit. We'll actually leave that, but just bring the darkness of it down a little bit. Kind of bring some contrast in there. The hue is just fine. I like that natural color. And we'll bring the saturation up just a little bit on that. Yellows, we have a couple yellows. This will probably be defined as some yellows as well. So we're actually gonna leave those yellows down. We will brighten them just a little bit. And the hue is fine. Now we have quite a bit of greens in the photo, and sometimes they will mark as aquas as well, which they of course do in this photo. So what we're gonna try and do is kind of get everything to be somewhat fitting with the photo. So right there, I changed the hue to make the colors kind of blend in a little bit better. And when we go back to green, we can just change the full color of it. We'll bring it up a little bit. And again, if you guys see how I'm editing, I'm just scrolling back and forth until I see what I like. There's so many different styles and types of editing that you can choose. I've come up with my own style. Again, I'm just going through a more in-depth way of how I edit my photos. So what we're gonna do is we're actually just gonna take this brush, we'll turn up the texture, turn up the clarity, we'll just brush him down. Brush him down, make him nice and crispy in the photo. We'll brush anything else that's in focus, his hand, that rope, make sure we get his hat too. Now, and then we'll do the exact opposite. We'll add another one. We'll actually just turn it down on both ends, about 45, 50. And we're just gonna draw on the other side. Now, as you can see, it's really just adding more of a bokeh look to it. If you guys don't know what bokeh means, go Google it.
As the aesthetic quality of the blur produced in out-of-focus parts of an image.
But again, now you guys can really start to see the difference in the photo. That looks good to me. Let's move on to the next one. So this is a 2018 Chevy Camaro SS. It was my one of my clients' dad's Chevy Camaros, but yeah, we shot this in one of my secret locations that I'd love to tell you guys about, but So obviously those highlights are way too high. Need to bring those shadows up a little bit. So again, you guys, I really like to stick with the basic edits first. So we'll mess with the exposure, the contrast, highlight, shadows, and everything. Move on to the point curve. I'm not gonna do much with the temperature in this one because when it comes to car photos, making them look warm isn't always the best, but we will turn that vibrance up like I usually do, turn the saturation down just a little bit, and then we'll start editing these colors. And now you can see that lens flare is really popping out a little bit. Those are also natural lens flares. Ain't no Photoshop shit up in here. And this is where the radial gradient comes into play. So whenever I take photos of cars, I always like to use the radial gradient. Why? You put it around the car, and we're only going to use the clarity and texture tool on just this part. Actually, we will use a little bit of the, not the exposure, but the shadows. Perfect. But we're going to use the texture and the clarity tool, and as you can tell, it starts to really just define that car up a little bit. You can really just tell it clears it up, and that's where all the difference is made. That's where all the difference is made. First up, let's correct this crop real quick because this is pissing me off. There we go. That one's looking pretty done to me. Let's move on to the next one. Guys, so this is my boy Dylan Vuko. Shout out Dylan Vukovic. This was a shoot we did about a year ago, right here in Kalamazoo. And God, I love this photo. This is one of my favorite ones, but this is actually a tough one to edit. So, you know, we'll start with the exposure. We might actually turn the exposure down after we're done editing, but turn those highlights down actually. Turn those shadows up. Okay, so I'll show you guys how I edited this photo because they do look pretty different from where we're at already. You know, obviously we did that point curve. Point curve's pretty fat on this one. As you can see, we turned down the saturation just a little bit on this one, but this is where that color mixer comes in heavy in this photo, because we got those blues on his sunglasses, and we really want to manipulate those. Really want to change those up, change the hue of them. But as you can see, just changing this background right here, kind of on all the sides. So we're gonna have to fix that as well, because I do not like that. Yeah, and we'll take these oranges, we'll saturate those oranges up a little bit. Maybe not too much. All right, this is where these two tools come in handy. So we're going to use this tool. We're going to turn the saturation all the way down. Same thing on this side. Bada boom. Now we're gonna use the brush because we gotta get around all these finer spots. What do we have that at? Okay, I guess we'll just keep that at 100, but we'll turn this down to 50. Okay. Turn that down to 55. Now we're basically just gonna paint around all this stuff. Takes 2 seconds, but as you can see, it's kind of just getting rid of those colors in the background that are taking away from the subject of the photo, which is obviously Dylan, but it's more so his sunglasses. I titled this photo "The End Is Near" for 2 reasons. One, the end of his cigarette is coming to an end, or his cigarette's coming to an end, and his glasses. It's as if he's looking out into the sunset, smoking his last cigarette as the apocalypse happens. So I think this photo is by far one of my favorites. I mean, I love his tattoos. I love his rings that he's got on. But yeah, that looks pretty good to me. They look a little different, but you know, we're just doing quick edits. Again, you know, if I'm doing a corporate job, we're hammering those out. We're getting them done quick. So we'll start with this one. But yeah, so on to the next photo. Shout out my girl Kaylee Ross. Go give Kaylee Ross a follow on IG. She's the homegirl. Probably didn't realize how shitty I took that first photo, but this is a good example of how you can take a poorly taken photo and turn it into editing. Now, with that being said, don't get into that habit. Don't get into the habit of taking bad photos beforehand and always trying to fix them in the editing process. What you want to do is, when you're doing pre-production, make sure you have everything correct. Everything correct as best as possible, because you don't want to have to go back and edit the photos. But like I said, you know, this is a good example of, you know, if you, let's say you're shooting outside, let's say you're on manual, you're shooting outside and you need a very, you know, high shutter speed so you don't get all the sunlight in, or you need a very high aperture so you don't get all the sunlight in. Then you go inside, you start taking photos in the dark, right? You actually might have gotten a couple good photos before you changed your settings or before you thought to. And so, you know, there are a couple ways where you can work around it. So this is a good prime example of one of those photos. So okay, so obviously we want to turn that saturation down, and you can already tell that the photo looks like 10 times better already. We did boost that temperature up a little bit. Contrast is pretty good. We'll bring some more of these highlights down a little bit, make it look as natural as we possibly can. Pretty much leave those shadows where they're at, leave the whites where they're at, and leave those blacks where they're at as well. You know, obviously a slight S-curve. We're not doing too much here because we do have too much of those highlights exposed. Bring this up just a smidgen. We'll throw on one of my presets. Oh yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Boom, boom, that's all we needed. That's all we needed was just that preset right there, baby. Right there, we just needed that preset, baby. Now they do look slightly different, but that preset actually looks a little bit better. I like the preset. Kayla, I might have to resend this one to you. All right, now this photo is a pretty simple edit process. This one was for St. Boyd. Shout out St. Boyd. He's a local rapper in Kalamazoo. But